Yoga does not judge. So if I should be different than I am comes up, that's not yoga.
Hello and welcome to the Sutra Squad podcast, episode 1. My name is Seth Barron. It is such a privilege to be with you, and we're so happy you're here. We're offering this as an introduction episode, where hopefully for us all to begin this practice of study together. And I want to first and foremost introduce the rest of the Sutra Squad: Sally Moore.
Good morning from California.
And Sara Page Hall.
Good morning from New Jersey.
So we are the hosts of the Sutra Squad podcast, and we're going to take just this episode to share a little bit about why we're here, some agreements that we're going to make, and just to share on our perspective on this text and study. But let's just start with a quick check-in. Sara Page, what is one word to describe where you are and how you feel right now?
Really excited. 2 words, but really excited.
Amazing. Sally, how do you feel right now?
Proud.
I am feeling like anticipation, because we're getting something started and there's such a exciting energy about something new. Okay, so let's just introduce ourselves a little bit more for the Sutra Squad audience. Sally, why don't you go first and just share a little bit about like how you got to yoga and the background and lineage of from whence do you teach, and anything else you want to share.
I came to yoga through a breakup, looking for some peace and actually a vacation from my thoughts, my body. And I am currently just about being the best I can for myself, for my family, for my cutest grandkids, which you will hear about because I can't stop myself. I teach Power Vinyasa and Yin Nidra right now at a studio in Davis, California. I, prior to COVID, traveled a lot and was teaching teachers in Africa and around the United States with the Baptiste program and Africa Yoga Project. I really believe in knowing where you came from. Your lineage as a yoga teacher or as a human is super important, not to limit you, but to help you understand why you show up as you show up in your life. My goal is to be studying forever. I was thinking my dad passed away 11 years ago. We were very close and he was like a lifelong learner. And I remember as a kid going, what is the matter with you, man? You're 40 years old. Just stop learning. It's exhausting. I'm not going to be like that. And now I wake up to being that. So the Yoga Sutras happened through Africa Yoga Project during COVID. Paige, I think, introduced him, Ellison, and I met Seth and Sara Page through it, and it just, boom, one of those things where you walk into something or you open your computer into something and it changes your whole life and you realize nothing needs to change for everything to change. So I'm deeply committed to studying the Yoga Sutras. To be perfectly honest, all I wanted to do is get in a little chat with these guys once a week and not have a podcast. So, but here we are. I'm committed to the study, whatever format it takes. And I just dream that we ignite each other, lift each other up, and use kind and powerful and really honest words to make the world, the energy of the world, our own lives, everything better. And we get more courageous through the study.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sally. Sara Page, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, everything that Sally said. And I am I've got about 1,200 hours of training in this discipline through the Baptiste Institute, but other disciplines as well. I'm highly committed, deeply committed to teaching. It is what I love to do. And I think that the way to do that is take as many trainings that interest you as possible. So I'm constantly training, teaching. I work at Hot Yoga Revolution in both Metuchen and Cranford. And same thing with Sally. I got very interested. In fact, I quit my job. It was during COVID, and I realized I hated my job. Like, why was I doing it? It was a job. So during COVID, when the Sutra studies started, which is where I met Seth, which is where I met Sally, really met Sally, I realized that this was what lit me up. You know, I think that you can always feel that time you feel something that really lights you up. I loved the people. I loved the scriptures. Just couldn't get enough. So I quit my job, and I teach full time now. And just like Sally, I just kind of wanted to get on and play in a sandbox with Seth and Sally. And now look where we are. It's a big sandbox, but I love it. And it's getting bigger. And the thing about it is truly is the satsang, is the community around it. There's no, what am I trying to say? There's no blame. There's no, you're not wrong or right. Everything is, you know, subjective to who you are in that minute. This is our, what, 5th year going through it? And it's never the same. Every time I read the sutras, even starting with, you know, the first one, it just goes, yeah, you know, it gives me that same charge. It gives me that same tingle. And that's why I know that what we're doing, whether it's 2 people listening or 200 or 2,000, it is so important to bring us back to just the basics. And that's why I train. That's why I teach. That's why I'm here. Deeply uncomfortable, but really excited.
Amazing. Thank you, Sara Page. So I'll just share a little bit about myself. I took a yoga class in 2016, January 27th, 2016. I know the day, at the old Jivamukti Yoga school in New York City, which is sadly since closed. But I took a class and showed up a little late and had an experience that changed my life. I sat up from Shavasana and I knew something shifted. And I started practicing more regularly at Jivamukti. And then I met someone who introduced me to my other sort of capital T teacher, Bethany Lyons, who is the owner of Lions Den Power Yoga. And then I went on to do a program at the studio. And then I went on to do the 200-hour training that she offered at the studio. At the end of my 200-hour training, I realized that what I knew more with most certainty was how much I didn't know. And Bethany offered a 300-hour training, and I had the means, I had the motive. So I signed up to go further. And so I also along the way did a 75-hour training in the Jivamukti method. I've done a really beautiful training on trauma-informed practice that was offered through Africa Yoga Project with the Mind Body Wellbeing program. And I've also had a career in technology. I worked at Google for 16 years. I worked at a startup and you know, hope to be a living example of living yoga in the world and really dedicating time and space for study, which is really why we're here. This practice started in the pandemic. You know, a teacher who we all know and love, Paige Ellison, through Africa Yoga Project, wanted to just gather community and thought the Yoga Sutra was one of the best sort of sources for that community. I took over facilitating that group. And for 3.5 years, we had a weekly study. It was beautiful. And, you know, as all things change, and it was time to, for me to personally move on from that. But the 3 of us have stayed connected and we felt so passionately about study. And when we thought like, well, how do we stay in studentship together in a new way and in a way that still really welcomes people in? And so we thought like, well, everybody's in, their brother's got a podcast, so why can't we have a podcast? And I said to Sara Page and Sally, like, do a podcast with me about the Yoga Sutra. And they both said, that's a wild idea and I'm down. So here we are. And we could not be more excited to be here because I think all 3 of us share a value and passion for cultivation of satsang. And satsang is a word in Sanskrit that means a like-minded group, or it can sometimes mean community. And really, we want to start to grow a community of people who are interested in the ancient wisdom of the Yoga Sutra and how we can live the values of the Yoga Sutra as ourselves in the modern world. None of us are renunciates. None of us live in an ashram. We all have to navigate this crazy world we're living in. And I think I can safely say all of us have found, a lot of depth in the living through the study of this really ancient wisdom. And it never ceases to amaze me as well that there is so much, it feels so fresh every time we come back to these same words. Every time we come back to these ideas, there's a new context to explore, maybe what we hadn't seen before, or a new perspective that informs a deeper understanding, or a new way that we can think of how we actually integrate this wisdom in our daily lives. And so our intention is to offer this in a place, and we'll go into some agreements next, but in a way that is inclusive to everyone. You do not need to be a yoga teacher. You do not need to have any qualifications, certifications, diplomas, certificates, or otherwise to join and to listen. We hope that this is something for anyone who has any interest in integration of ancient wisdom into their modern life here in the world. It's, we're recording this episode on October 14th, 2025. And it's for you. So if you're listening to us today, welcome. If you listen to us at some point in the future, welcome. We're just so glad you're here. We're so grateful for your time and your attention. And we hope to honor your time and attention with something valuable that we hopefully share in our conversations every week. Let's talk about some agreements. We thought we would sort of share some principles that will inform our study, and think of these as like agreements that we want to make with you. And I'll just say before we get into the specifics that like this will be an evolving alliance. So this will be we reserve the right to amend these agreements at any time, and we are super eager for your feedback on where we should consider to deepen or expand these agreements. So Sally, let's get started with the first agreement.
The first agreement is that we believe that Yoga Sutra study is for everyone. The Yoga Sutras are for everyone. We welcome each and every one of you exactly as you are, and there is no way to do this wrong, with a commitment of growth and non-judgment, open heart. And I always remind myself, my students, like, yoga does not judge. So if I should be different than I am comes up, that's not yoga. So we believe this is for everyone.
Yeah. Everyone has a right to yoga. Everyone has a right to the wisdom of the Yoga Sutra. And to just add on to, you don't have to be Hindu. You don't have to be anything. The Yoga Sutra is a text that really allows for anyone of any ethnic, cultural, religious perspective, lineage, and experience. Every single person, every human being is welcome, and yoga is for everyone. Can't say it enough. Sara Page, what is next?
We believe there is no one single correct way to study or practice yoga. Amen. The study of yoga practice and the philosophy are a lifelong journey. Absolutely.
I said this in a teacher training session that I delivered, that I think if you ever hear someone say this is the right way, the only way, I would encourage a lot of skepticism. There are many, many, many lineages of yoga. All three of us share a deep practice and study of the Baptiste power yoga lineage. I have a deep practice of the Jivamukti yoga lineage, and there are so many. I couldn't even begin to start the whole laundry list of all the different methods and all the different lineages, from Ashtanga to Forest to Katona to Yin to
many paths, but one
Ashtanga.
destination.
Yes, many paths, one destination. And in this satsang, our destination is the Yoga Sutra. And every single one of those methods, every single text on yoga is informed by the Yoga Sutra. Even the pre-sutra texts like the Vedanta, like the Rig Veda or the Mahabharata, and the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is an instruction on yoga. Master Patanjali codified it into its own text a little later on, but these are not. There's no exclusivity around this, and any time I think one of the things that informs our perspective is that this is for everyone, like we said, and that there's no one right answer. There's no one right way, which takes us to our third agreement, that we are not perfect. And we are not claiming to be perfect. We are not necessarily experts, and we are not gurus with a capital G. We are students. And I want to just talk for a very brief moment about that word, guru. It's thrown around a lot in Western culture, and it means something different in a lot of Eastern lineages. And in the capital G, and it means different things in different contexts. So like a capital G guru is a spiritual master and a holder of a lineage, and someone who can perform rites like initiation, and none of us are that. Just to be really clear, none of us are that. Now, even in the Guru Mantra, it's also said that there's a guru nearby that we see. And we are that to each other and for ourselves and for each other. And guru is most literally from Sanskrit, a remover of darkness. And in the very commonly chanted Guru Mantra, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshvara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. It's translated as like there's a Guru Brahma, there's a Guru of creation. Guru Vishnu, there's a Guru that sustains us. Guru Devo Maheshvara, there's a Guru of transformation. And that's a reference to the sort of trinity of deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And then the second line, Guru Sakshat, is sometimes translated as there's a guru nearby, or there's a guru that we see. Aksha in Sanskrit is eyes. And so Sakshat is one translation, is like a guru seen and perceivable. And then Param Brahma, like there's a guru's into the infinite beyond of creation. And this really beautiful text, it appears in other mantras as well. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha is translated as I humble myself before the teachings of my guru, or I offer my humble obeisances at the lotus feet of my guru is another translation of that phrase. So there's this idea that we are all gurus to each other, we are all teachers, and there are people who are spiritual masters. All of that exists concurrently, and we humble ourselves before the teachings of all of those. So this is, again, in that same vein that like, we're not claiming to have the right answer. We are here to present ourselves as students, and we're inviting you, our dear listeners, into studentship together. Sally, what is our next agreement?
So we're calling this the ouch oops. And it's like our intention is to be inclusive, welcoming, and explore all kinds of perspective, be open and learn from each other. And we're going to make mistakes. And we just will assume good intentions and we'll correct if we catch ourselves. But there's chances, I think about this all the time, that we'll say something hurtful and it is not our intention. And our intention is to learn from it, but be courageous and speak our truth.
We wanted to include this because it's so important in this moment, again, of a lot of, in this cultural moment, let's say, to really take a stand for each other and for our good intentions. And we invite you students into that as well. I'm sure there will be things we say, if you listen for long enough, that you agree with, and some that you disagree with, and that's okay. And we will make mistakes because we're human, and humans make mistakes. And we will do our best to correct those mistakes when we are aware of them. We will do our best to make as few of them as possible, and they will happen. And so we are making a stand to believe in the good intentions of each other. And we invite you to do the same. And as maybe a small suggestion to do so elsewhere in your life and see what happens. Sara Page, what is our next agreement?
It's just a perfect segue. We don't disparage and we don't speak ill of others. And I do want to speak to that because we live in a world right now that is toxic. For some reason, we think it's okay to speak our truth when sometimes saying, I just want to speak my truth is mean. There are ways to
your truth about other people.
Yeah. No. And so I really hope that this starts a conversation of kindness. How is it that we can be authentic to ourselves? Like you just stated, we're going to say things, we're going to make mistakes. But how is it that you can stand, or I can stand in my own power without taking away somebody else's power? And I think that when we gossip, when we talk ill of others, including yourself, nobody's harder on me than myself. Nobody. It takes away your power. It diminishes. And so I know that all three of us are deeply committed to being honest, to being kind, and being forthright, but we do not speak ill of others. And if it starts segueing into that because of our humanness, there is a sense of step back, take a breath. What is the mirror that you're holding up right now? Because when we gossip, when we do disparage others, there's a mirror. What is it about that person that triggers me? What is it about that person? And that is part of the work. That is part of what we're doing. It's part of what we are up to. Certainly, I won't speak for Seth and Sally, but I know them. But for myself personally, I will speak to the guy. I do not ever mean to hurt, to say I'm bringing up emotion. It's not who I am. It's not in my DNA. And I hold myself deeply accountable, and I ask that Seth and Sally do the same thing.
Thank you, Sara Page. And I think it's just, again, like Sharon Gannon, who's the creator of the Jivamukti Yoga Method with David Life, has a quote that you'll hear me say. If you stick around, I'll say it again because it's one of my favorites. She says, do you want to be right or do you want to be free? And so often that disparagement is around a clinging to rightness. Like, I'm right, so these people have to be wrong. And part of what we want to do is say, we're here to offer a perspective. You can decide right and wrong for yourself, although I would offer that that might not be super useful. Because what we want to be up to is freedom, is liberation, is freedom from our own suffering. And one of the ways to do that in action and in behavior is to intentionally choose that we it doesn't mean that we don't have opinions. It doesn't mean that we don't have perspective, but it means that especially in this space, we're not here to speak ill of anyone else. We're here to do us to the best we can, to be in this studentship together, and we'll leave other conversation for other places. So the last agreement that we're going to go through, I'll speak to, is that we know that power structures of privilege are complex. And we know that we can only know and speak from our own direct lived experience. And there's power in acknowledging what we don't know. There's power in hearing the lived experience of others. And so we will really seek to bring in other perspectives. We'll have other people join the squad as we go into our study in the future to help us inform that. People from different lineages, people with different backgrounds. We hope to, again, cultivate a real sense of diverse perspective from this place that we're really not interested in right and wrong. And we're doing our best to be aware that there is privilege in operation. Look, we have privilege to be able to have a safe place where we can have the quiet to record a podcast. That's a privilege. Not everyone in the world has that space. And part of our intention in doing this is to bring that privilege to the best possible use that we can, whatever privilege we have, as much or as little. And there are ways in which we can do our best to recognize that. And there are ways in which it's very challenging to recognize that. And in the same vein of that we've been speaking to, we want to just presence that, power and power structures and dynamics are very complicated, and they're shifting. And we know that our perspective is limited by our experiences, and the only perspective we can share is from our own experiences. So we're not presenting anything as, again, like the right way or the only way. We're just expressing it as the best we figured out so far. So to expand on that, we wanted to share just a paragraph that appears on our website, sutrasquad.com. Check it out for episode links and all kinds of stuff that we'll do in the future, but specifically on politics and yoga. And our intention is to offer and study the Yoga Sutra in a way that is radically inclusive, accessible to everyone, and to offer a sense of sharanam, which is a Sanskrit word that means refuge, shelter, or resting place. Offer a sense of sharanam from the divisive language currently dominating so much of our public discourse. We are making a conscious and intentional choice to keep this space focused on study of this ancient wisdom and how it can inform our lives today, and not offer a political perspective on current events. We know others have different opinions about the intersection of politics and yoga, and we encourage you to pursue practice and study with teachers and in spaces that resonate with you. We hope to offer this podcast as a space of study in which we can all put aside certainty, division, and labels to connect with a focus on embodying ancient wisdom. We believe this is a path to discover what binds us together in this fascinating multitude of human experiences, and connect more deeply to the inner wisdom revealed by dedicated study of the Yoga Sutra. We are very glad you're here and hope you stay a while. So I'm going to quickly speak to the structure and how we're going to approach our study. The Yoga Sutra is this really fascinating and somewhat sparse text. There's only 195 or 196 verses, depending on which translation, because there's a verse in chapter 3 that sometimes gets counted as 2 verses and sometimes gets counted as 1 verse. But even still, in those 195, 96 verses, they're organized into 4 chapters, or pada in Sanskrit. Pada also means foot or step. And in this case, it means chapters or section. And there's this fascinating journey that the author, Master Patanjali, takes us on. And it begins in the first chapter as the Samadhi Pada. And Samadhi means bliss, absorption, full flow state, presence, nirvana. It's the ascension, the last of the 8 steps of yoga. And so it's really fascinating that he ends at the beginning. Strike that, reverse it. He begins at the ending. And describes the state that we achieve, what arises when we fully dedicate ourselves to practice. And then Master Patanjali takes the second chapter, the Sadhana Pada, to talk about practice. Sadhana is a word that means spiritual practice and your dedicated practice or dedicated spiritual practice. So we go from Samadhi, where we're going, to practice, the Sadhana Pada. And then the third chapter is the Vibhuti Pada, which describes the yogic siddhis or powers or skills that arise from dedicated practice. And the last chapter is the Kaivalya Pada. And Kaivalya is a term that means liberation or freedom. And so it's this idea, and this will be the journey, welcome to it, that we go on from the goal or the final outcome of yoga to the practice of how we get to it, to the powers and skills that can arise from it, and then the freedom that we can feel through this dedicated practice. I think, I'll add a little bit of history that this text is debatable in its age. There's no one canonical certainty about when it was written, but most people think around 2000 BCE. And Master Patanjali himself was also a polymath and Sanskrit scholar and wrote texts on Sanskrit grammar, among many other things. And in some lineages, it's believed that he was like a real human being. In other lineages, it's believed that he was an avatar of one of the expansions of the divine, whose purpose in earth was to codify this text and then be able to share it out in the world. Either way. And then I'm sure there's people who aren't certain that Patanjali is a single person, because none of us were there. What we know is that he's we use the male pronoun he because it's an assumption that at that time, most dedicated students of Sanskrit grammar and yoga were men. And that and we'll refer to this being as a person, because it does seem like whether their divinity, we're all sparks of the divine. And so we don't know. We weren't there. So the best we can do is say that it's written by a person a long time ago. And also assume, in the same sense of like assuming intentions, that like every single word, part of what we'll talk about, like every word matters, the sequence of the word matters, the sequence of the sutras and the sequence of the structure, all can contribute. Study of all of this can contribute to the depth of our understanding, in a way that we hope maybe makes a little space for you to find some freedom. So Sara Page and Sally, since we've referenced that we've done this before, we've gone through this text before. If you're listening out there and you've been through a yoga teacher training or you've studied yoga long enough, you will hear a lot of these terms, these texts, and it's always new. There's always a fresh understanding of it. And one thing we thought would be fun would be to talk about, like, well, every child is your favorite child. If you have a specific sutra that really resonates in a meaningful way for you, right now. Sally, what is if you had a favorite, or if there was a sutra that really calls to your heart, which would it be?
Sutra 1.1, the beginning. And it's funny because the more I study this one, like they say, it's so obviously often skipped over, because it's like now yoga, But the more I have studied it, I just wake up to so much more. So my favorite translation, I think, at this moment is: with humility and open heart and mind, we embrace the sacred study of yoga. And that's from The Secret Power of Yoga by Nishala Joy Devi. And what I've discovered in really thinking about this over the last few weeks is now once again brings in our lineage, our family, our history. Like all of that brings us to the now. I just thought, when I just say, wake up, get present. But it's like bringing all of myself into the now and then showing up, open heart, open mind, knowing that what I choose now is going to ripple into the future, right? That the now is important. But I just never before considered that my lineage had anything to do with now. So this one I just love because I think it's so simple, yet so often, how much of my life have I missed out on? Even though I've physically been there at the family dinner table that I dreamt of getting together now that my kids are adults and all over the place, and I missed it because I'm not here. So it seems simple, but it's so valuable.
Love it. And we'll talk about this more, but we'll go into more detail and a lot more depth on this sutra in next week's episode, because we'll start at the beginning. Sara Page, what is a yoga sutra that really speaks to your heart and that you love?
I love that you say, like you reference now, right? Because it changes. But the one thing that I've noticed is, like, if I go to my books, and I've got lots of books on the sutras, and I just let it open, it still opens to this one sutra always, which is 123, Ishvara Pranidhana Va. And which means, and I'm using the translation light on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali by Iyengar, BKS Iyengar. I love this: to contemplate on God, to surrender one's self to him, to bring everything face to face. I love that. Face to face with whatever your God, the God of your understanding, looks like, is surrender to everything. And then he goes on to say, one's ego, all good and virtuous actions, pains and pleasures, joys, sorrows, elation and miseries, to the universal soul, the God of your understanding. Through surrender, the aspirant's ego is effaced, and the grace of the Lord pours down upon him like a torrential rain.
Oh, can you read that last sentence again, Sara Page? Read that last sentence again slowly. It's so good.
And this is what I would have tattooed. If I was going to have something tattooed on my body, I have nothing. It would be Ishvara Pranidhanavat. Through surrender, the aspirant, or myself, yourself, ego is effaced, and the grace of the Lord, or the God of your understanding, pours down upon him like a torrential rain. The grace of the Lord pours down upon you like a torrential rain. And the visual image I have is just standing in the rain without any lightning coming in, just washing me free. And that's, for me, always when I get bound up, I'm going to get emotional, but when I get into myself too much and into my head too much, give it to God. Whatever that looks like for you, Muhammad, the Buddha, Krishna, Shiva, whatever, Jesus, whatever it looks like, give it away because it does not serve you. It is not good for me. If it is not good for me, I don't need it. Get rid of it. Surrender. So that's it.
And I'll just say, we're gonna talk about God on this podcast. So buckle up, kiddos. And we'll go into a lot more depth as we get into this, but I just want to presence that Ishvara, which is the term in Sanskrit used in the Yoga Sutra that is typically translated as God, it literally means like the most choicest. And there's this implication of agency in the word, in the actual like Sanskrit word. For most of us who, I grew up in a Jewish home, and in that Abrahamic, Judeo-Islamo-Christian faith lineage, we're typically presented the idea of God as separate from us and a single one thing. And part of what makes the Yoga Sutra so radically inclusive is, as Sara Page said it so nicely, the God of your understanding. Ishvara is not a fixed object. Ishvara there's no right answer to the expression of this idea of the divine, or for lack of a better word, God. And I just want to be really, really clear about that, because it means that if you practice Islam, you can practice yoga. If you believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you can practice yoga. If you worship divine Sri Krishna as the highest cosmic being, you can worship yoga. And even if you consider yourself an atheist, great. You can practice yoga. If you consider yourself an agnostic, great. You can practice yoga. There is a way to feel into and get up to something bigger than yourself, some sense of a higher power. It's a deeply personal journey. We are not here to tell you what the right answer is on that journey, for sure. And whenever we talk about this, I love the reference from the 12-step tradition, because it's step two is surrender to a higher power. And there's a turn of phrase that if you can't find a higher power, start with a doorknob. Because in that lineage of study, if you're an addict, you're stuck in a room. Like, it's a metaphor, but your addiction is a room that you're stuck in, and you're trying to get sober. You're trying to get out of the room of your addiction, and there's a door. And the only way through the door is to turn the knob. So if you got nowhere else to find a higher power, you can start with that doorknob. That doorknob has a power over you. Whether or not you like it doesn't matter. You want out of the room, you got to surrender to the fact that the doorknob is the only way. So there is no right answer except to say that this is an invitation for you to be curious about your higher power. And we're going to talk about this a lot more. So if this sounds a little like, what? Don't get stressed and don't be afraid.
Looking back at the actual word of Ishvara, because I really love to pick apart the Sanskrit, BKS Iyengar says the Lord, comma, God, comma, and I love this, and universal soul, whatever that looks like. Universal soul.
Beautiful. So my favorite one that I would tattoo on my body is 415 Vastu Samya Chitta Bedat Tayor Vibhaktaha Pantaha, which generally translates as each of us perceives the same object differently according to our history, karma, experience, etc. And one of the reasons that I find it so compelling is that even the ancients understood that all of our perception is subjective. And that every single one of us has a unique collection of life experiences that inform the lens through which we perceive the material world. It's a reminder that to me, for me, of curiosity. Like when you see something differently than somebody else, how fascinating. It's a reminder to call in that curiosity as opposed to digging into my rightness. And it's a reminder that every single human being has an infinitely complex series of experiences and perspectives that inform the moment of my experience of them and our experience together. And that if I can hold space or just like open a little space in my own mind to remember that I can't see the world through Sally's eyes or Sara Page's eyes or anybody else's. I can only try to see the world through my own eyes, try to see where I'm lacking clarity, where my perspective might be informing how I show up in a given moment, and be really, really curious about that, and be really, really curious about that for others. I think that's a path toward connection, and away from division, and toward curiosity and away from certainty.
Can I share something that I think fits with all the sutras that was in the beginning of a book I look at a lot, The Secret Power of Yoga? Once again, Nikhala Joy Devi. I'm working on pronouncing her first name. But she has a quote in the beginning of her book, and it says, "Seek not to learn the sutras. Seek instead to learn who is the one who studies the scripture."
Slow that down and say it one more time, because that's gold.
It's so good. It keeps me curious and open. So
yeah. Can you say it again?
Yeah. Seek not to learn the sutras, because that used to get in the way of my life. Seek to learn who is the one who studies the scripture.
I love that. And you know what, Sally, it goes to what Seth was just talking about perception, in my opinion, because it changes constantly. Who you were at the beginning of this podcast is different than who you are right now. And who you were 5 minutes ago, maybe Seth dropped some gold. It's changed your perception of something, or maybe I dropped some gold or you dropped some gold. And it's just, how do we perceive things and being open to that? And it's going to change. That's why when we go through these, it's different every time. I love that, Sally. Thank you.
And it's a reminder too that you can say the words, you can say these words, you can say the words in English, you can say the words in Sanskrit, but it's the study of the words, and it's the study of the person who's studying the words that will really connect, that will really matter. It's a beautiful reminder.
I think what is so important and what we're going to do, and what I'm glad we're doing, and it's something that you referenced beautifully, Seth, which is we will pick apart every single word, because every word in Sanskrit, to one of the great learnings of this, means something.
Yeah. Well, there might be a little editorial, judicious decisions made along the way. Every word might be a little ambitious.
Maybe.
But that part of this study is that we really are, we're students of Sanskrit as well. We really, Sanskrit is the source language of yoga. It's said to be the source language of language, by some. And we really do believe that, like, while we want, and as teachers, like, we want practice to be accessible, it's also really valuable to look at the source material and seek deeper understanding from there, as opposed to just saying what somebody else has said and translated. So you'll hear us reference, as we get into our study next week of the actual text, you'll hear us referencing different translations, different authors, and we are doing that very intentionally because we don't want to present any one single perspective as right. And what we really want to do is offer enough variety of perspectives for each one of you listening to find your own understanding, to find how these words land and resonate in your heart and what they mean to you, for you, because that's the only place from which we can find an embodiment of the words.
Well, and I'm going to add one more thing. Is my understanding of the Yoga Sutras is it was an oral tradition that Patanjali then wrote down. And then I think that we are now trying to bring it back to like the oral tradition of speaking and sharing, because there's a lot lost when you simply read, at least for me. Like, there's something in this exchange that brings the book to life.
Which is the satsang component, and I'm going to reference one thing. Seth has beautiful Sanskrit, diction and all of that, but don't be intimidated by that. Be really curious, speak the words, get into the Sanskrit, repeat it. It's beautiful. It's a very musical, poetic, language. Don't be intimidated by the Sanskrit, which is something I tend to do.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Sara Page. Yeah. Don't be intimidated by the Sanskrit. It's just a language. It's just words, and fumble your way through. And, so are we. Okay. So to wrap up, every week we are going to offer an inquiry and a teaching tip. Inquiry is just, like a question or series of questions to pose so that you can have something to chew on through the week. If you're a journaler, great. If you're not, great. But it's just like a touchstone that we want to offer for you to put your attention. So, Sara Page, what's your inquiry for this week?
Where am I living in my head? And where do I need to surrender? Where am I living in my head? Where am I making up stories in my head and making them real? And how can I live in the world authentically and surrender and not in my head?
Sally, what's an inquiry for this week?
I like a string of inquiries. You'll learn that about me. So what I have here is, can I embrace this moment as it is and as it is not? Can I practice showing up fully regardless of what's calling for my attention around me? And can I invite some fun and allow for some mess in the moment, knowing that life's a journey of nows?
Life is a journey of nows. That's beautiful. My inquiry for this week is to just think about, if you're listening, you probably practice yoga of some kind, or maybe a little bit. And I would just encourage you to really ask yourself why. Why do you go and get on a yoga mat? Why do you teach? Why do you listen to this and maybe other, podcasts about less topical, more spiritual or wisdom kinds of content? What draws you to this? And just spend some time and really interrogate that for yourself. Really think about that for you. I know for me, it's certainly been a place of real refuge, and it's made my life just unbelievably rich in a way that wasn't what I thought I was looking for. And now I can't imagine living without. All right. So we're also going to offer one teaching tip. All three of us give class regularly, and we know a lot of you listening out there probably will or do as well. And, we want to offer some suggestions or just like an easy little tip that you can bring into classes that you teach. So Sally, why don't you start us off? What's one teaching tip for the week?
Enter each posture in each moment as the new moment it is. We often arrive in our default posture first. So notice that, wake up, and then show up with integrity and curiosity.
And Sally said this in another conversation, and I reference it now all the time. The best teacher is the teacher that's on the mat. So whether or not you are standing in front of the room or you're on your yoga mat, consider that you are a teacher. You're teaching yourself. You're teaching others around you by your presence, or you're actually, leading the flow. So all these teaching tips are for everyone, and they're like, you can bring them into your practice in whatever way is useful or meaningful or relevant. Sara Page, what's your teaching tip this week?
It goes to Ishvara Pranidhanavad a little bit. Get out of your rightness. Get out of the rightness of it. This is the way it's supposed to look. I did this way yesterday. I had a great, get out of that. It's a different day. Surrender into what is now, the presence. Chittavritti, the mind swirl. Breathe into it. Don't try to block it, because your body is telling you something, and then surrender and move without making it mean something.
Yeah, I had a teacher, Bethany actually once said this turn of phrase that I really loved, which was drop the significance of the pose. Just drop the significance.
Thank you.
Right? So the teaching tip I'll offer is to invite students to set an intention for their practice and to distill it to one word. So, I teach at a studio, I teach at a gym, but this is one of these, I think this is a practice that applies everywhere. You can just, invite students, like maybe before you say Om, to just take a moment and think about why you're here. I live in New York, I live in Manhattan in New York City. You got a lot of places you could be. You got a lot of things you could do. And you chose to orient your life to be in a yoga studio. Why? What do you want? What do you really want by being here together in this hour? Because nothing I say as an instructor will generate that for you. You're the only one who can get what you came for. I desperately want for you to get what you came for. And I'm going to offer a practice in the hopes that you can find your way to get what you came for. But if you don't know what you came for, then you're not going to get anything. And if what you came for is a workout, don't worry, I got you. If you came for spiritual growth and enlightenment, I got you. And every single intention in between is welcome in any studio where I'm teaching. I even will sometimes say that in my invitation to set the intention, so people don't feel compelled to have any right answer to that. It doesn't matter, and this is one that I like, and I say this a lot. It doesn't matter what you choose. It matters very much that you choose. So set an intention for yourself. And then as we go through practice, I might offer a moment where if there's a fold or if there's a pause to invite students, go back to that touchstone of your intention and what's one action in your body you could take right now to more deeply embody that. Put that in your body right now. Not as a theory, not as an idea, as in action, in practice. So that concludes our welcome and introduction episode. We are so excited. Next week, we will be getting into our study of text, and we're going to begin at the beginning. We are so grateful for your time, for your presence, and welcome to the squad. Welcome to the satsang. Thank you so much, Sara Page. Thank you so much, Sally. And thank you so much to all of our listeners out there. If you like what you heard and you want to stay connected to us, please subscribe, and consider leaving a review. It really helps discoverability. And we will be back with you in our next episode. Take very good care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Bye. See you soon.